An epic collision of opposing forces is underway. Of course, we're talking about the first criminal trial of an American ex-president, which is set to commence in a matter of days. It is today crashing into Donald Trump's well-honed strategy of delay, delay, delay. For example, this morning, with just 5 days to go before jury selection begins, that strategy produced yet another appeal in the hush money case, a third in 3 days. Donald Trump's lawyers filed the challenge invoking an article of New York state law, reportedly citing Judge Juan Merchan's refusal to step aside in the case. But while such shameless attempts to delay accountability, combined with an ever-looming presidential election season, are enough to make any one of us say, let's just get to it already, we should never lose sight of how historic this moment in time really is. We are in the last period before this has never happened before, right? Because on Monday, attorneys for both sides are going to begin the process of selecting members of a jury. A group of 12 New Yorkers, men and women, uniquely tasked with deciding one small matter: the fate of a criminal defendant who is also a presidential frontrunner, accused of secretly buying the silence of a porn star in the twilight hours of the 2016 presidential campaign and trying to cover it up. Whether you owe your comprehension of the judicial process and system to a law degree or to watching My Cousin Vinny or Runaway Jury like me, understand the process at this point is pretty straightforward. People just like you and me respond to our jury duty summons. We're called to the courthouse. We'll be questioned by attorneys who will evaluate the answers in an attempt to gauge bias, right? To game this out one way or the other. Both legal sides will have avenues to dismiss a certain number of potential jurors as part of a process that is as much an art, really, as a science. The complicating factor here is, as it always is, Trump himself. With such name recognition, it will be a challenge to assemble a clean slate jury. As the New York Times reports, quote, at first blush, Trump's jury pool appears to be unfriendly. 70% of Manhattan's 1.1 million registered voters are Democrats. Many know the defendant well, since he once called New York his home and made his name in its tabloid newspapers. Juries and judges in Manhattan have already found Trump liable for committing sexual abuse, defaming his accuser, and most recently for wildly inflating his net worth to obtain better loan terms. So again, appreciate the historic nature of what we're all about to witness, especially because with so many delays in so many other Trump trials, the hush money case in New York is likely our last and only hope at accountability for Donald Trump before Americans head to the polls. It's where we start today with some of our favorite reporters and friends. Former acting Solicitor General and MSNBC legal analyst Neil Katyal is here. With me at the table, New York Times investigative reporter Sue Craig. She's brought presents, can we call them presents, in the form of information, and our friend, Democratic strategist and director of the public policy program at Hunter College, Basil Smigel's back. Tell us what you got.
The jury questionnaire.
Oh, wow.
Let's do it. Yeah. Okay, so the judge on Monday morning is going to have a room full of prospective jurors, and he's going to start by asking them if they, just right off the top, if they recognize any of the potential witnesses that might be up or names that might be mentioned. And then he's going to say, do you have a good faith reason why you shouldn't serve? And he's going to hear them out. And then he's going to start with a list that we now have of 42 questions for the prospective jurors that remain. And some of them are, not surprising. They start out pretty basic. What neighborhood do you live in? What do you do for a living? And as we go through this, there's no question about how they voted, but I think you're going to get to that. You're going to be able to distill that from some of the questions. So they're going to ask, do you participate in any organizations or advocacy groups? If so, which ones? And then they're going to say, what cable networks do you watch?
Oh, wow.
Maybe MSNBC? Do you read the New York Times? Do you watch Fox News or Newsmax? Are you on Truth Social? Are you on Twitter? So there's going to be a lot of questions like that. And then as we go through, they get a bit more probing about Donald Trump. Have you, a relative or a close friend, ever worked for a company or organization that is owned or run by Donald Trump or anyone in his family? Have you or a relative or close friend ever worked or volunteered for a Trump presidential campaign? Have you ever attended a Trump rally? Do you currently follow Donald Trump on social media? Have you ever considered yourself a supporter or belong to any of the following? And among them are the Oath Keepers and the Boogaloo Boys.
Wow.
So we're getting very granular. Do you have any strong opinions or firmly held beliefs about whether the former president may be criminally charged in state court? They get very specific. They don't go down to, do you believe the election was stolen? But as they go through, they're going to get to the end, and they're going to have a lot of information about these jurors.
What is the, I mean, you're basically under oath, right, when you answer questions as a prospective?
That's right. And it's interesting because there's been a lot of discussion, and just back up a little bit, though. The jury is so important. I've sat through a lot of trials, including now, oddly, several involving Donald Trump.
Yeah.
And it is crucial who gets on. And I think one of the things, and I think people who watch the show know, but there's going to be people who are trying to get on this jury. I know somebody who months ago thought that the trial was going to start on March 25th and they wanted to be on a jury that day. They put it on so that they could potentially try and get on the trial. There's going to be a lot of people like that.
They're sitting on some boring, right?
Right, they ended up getting on some boring civil trial. But that's
boring, tedious, endless, 8 months long trial.
But if I'm both sides, that's what I'm going to worry about, is that there's stealth jurors trying to come in, and that happens. So I think they're going to be watching for all of that. But it is so important who gets in the jury box. It's going to decide the whole show. And there aren't people out there who don't know who Donald Trump is. But at the end, what the judge is trying to get to the bottom of it, at the end of this, and what both sides are listening to, is you may have bias, but at the end of the day, can you set aside your feelings? When I sat in the criminal trial against the Trump organization, there were a lot of people who got up who said they hated Donald Trump. Some said they couldn't be fair, but some said they could. And those are sort of, I think, whether or not they're answering honestly is another question, but we hope that they are. But some people say, look, I hate the guy, but I can. And there were other people on that loved him. And said that they also could be fair. There wasn't, I know New York is famously Democratic, but there are people that are going to walk in from both who voted for Donald Trump,
of course,
and people who didn't.
What is the degree, and does it differ from any ordinary trial, of making sure that no one gets to any of them, right? That no one walks up to any of them or tries to do any of their own reporting separate from the official process? Are they going to be protected or shielded in any way?
On their names, I believe, will be shielded, and then separately, even I'm going to probably be in an overflow room because there's going to be very few even reporters in the courtroom on Monday. There's going to be a pool, partly because the courtroom itself is going to be filled up with prospective jurors. I understand that we won't even be able to see them from the overflow room. But their names, there's going to be rules about releasing their names. Remember in the E. Jean Carroll trial, they were anonymous, and at the end, the judge says, I advise you never to tell anybody you were here and you were a juror. Go.
Right.
I mean, I don't think it's going to be quite that strict because both sides are going to know their names, but there's going to be rules around releasing them and harassment of them.
There'll be rules against harassment of them. Neil Katyal, do you think those rules will be followed?
I think they generally will be followed. I mean, I've had the privilege of actually working on a jury selection in one of the high-profile trials of our lifetimes, the Derek Chauvin case. And, I saw just kind of the magic, Nicole, that's involved in selecting a jury. And it's, in a high-profile case, and it's hard to find people who have no views about something. But it is not hard to find open-minded people who will listen. And so, I know there's a lot of reporting today that says who's on the jury is really going to matter and so on. I think that's a little bit overblown. Most fair-minded people will come to the same result in a criminal trial. It's different than just watching the news or something and making up your mind, because there's an orderly process, there's rules of evidence, there are instructions to be followed and the like. And one of the things this phase that starts on Monday is going to be about is ferreting out, do you have some inability to basically be impartial? Do you hate Donald Trump or love him so much that you can't listen to the evidence and come to a fair-minded conclusion? There's one way, though, in which I think it's always worth worrying about juror bias, and that's the asymmetry between the prosecution and the defense. Remember, the prosecution, in order to convict Donald Trump, they've got to run the table and win all 12 jurors. You only need one of them to say, hey, I don't think he's guilty, in order for the conviction to be, in order for there not to be a conviction. That's part of our system of justice, to make sure that defendants, including people like Donald Trump, have so much protection between them. Now, Donald Trump is saying, well, it's not fair that I'm tried in New York. It's 70% Democratic and stuff like that. The answer to that is, Donald Trump, don't commit your crime in New York. The Constitution, the Sixth Amendment, requires the trial to be in the place in which the crime occurred. That was New York. This trial will be in New York. It sure looks like it's starting on Monday.
Hey everyone, MSNBC has a new and improved app. You'll get real-time alerts and analysis, live blogs, in-depth essays, video highlights, and the best 2024 election coverage. Download the new MSNBC app. Here's how to do it. You tap on the App Store on your phone. You hit search on the bottom right corner. You type in MSNBC. You click on the MSNBC app. You click on Get or the cloud icon and enjoy it.